Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob, for putting me the first one up after Oz. I thought we were friends. It is a privilege to be with you. It's great to share with you. This is my first experience of Rubicon, and so far it's been brilliant. Let's see. Rob said to me a few weeks ago, would I come and speak a little bit about creating community within a fragmented society, a little bit about what we do in the Salvation Army in the area. And I said, yeah, great, that's the passion of mine, the whole idea of community. I love it. I'd love to talk about that. How long do I have? And he said, about 10 or 15 minutes. I said, oh, great, okay, wonderful. It's not as if there's some kind of list that I could pull out to say, here you go, here's the solution for building community. Oh, hang on, as it happens, there is a list. So that's there for you to read during the coffee break if you want to, finding out how to build community. But what I want to do, if I can, is Oz has very helpfully given a broad sweep, a kind of a global sweep of the influence of church and culture and community. So if I can, I want to bring it down to a more local level for just a few minutes. But let me start with the biblical story of creation. On the sixth day of creation, the sixth and final day of creation, God looked across all that he had made. He looked at the sun, the moon, and the stars. He looked at the waters that were teeming with life, the birds of the air, the beasts of the field. He looked at the rocky grandeur of the mountains and the smoothness of the pebbles by the shore. And it says in the Bible that God looked at all he had made and he said, "It is not good for man to be alone." And so God, at the start of creation, realized that it wasn't good to be alone. We needed to be together. And a suitable helper and mate was produced, was created. And so God says from the beginning, this idea of community, companionship is vital. And I would echo what people have said throughout the centuries of the validity, the need for community is not only a good thing, for me it is a God thing. Community, being together, bringing people together, it's what's needed. Over the years, many people have said many things. Thousands of books have been written on the subject. I particularly like what sociologist Zygmunt Bauman has said about community. In fact, the very word community, he said it's a word that has more than just a meaning, it's a word that has a feeling. You say the word community and you feel something. There's something about that word. It kind of brings about this idea of warmth and security and togetherness and comfort. It has a feeling. But Bauman goes on to suggest that this idea of community, while tantalizingly close, we never quite seem to manage it. We think of repossessing this paradise lost. We don't quite get there. Well, I suppose I would agree with him to some extent that would be the case, that we are always trying to achieve something, trying to bring people together. This idea of community, never quite fully get there, but it's worth trying. It's worth trying to keep pressing on and doing that. If you were to walk just a few hundred meters down the street, you'd find our small little community center, our little Salvation Army community center. And as you walk past it, you see on the door, it has our logo on there, and it has our motto. Everyone has to have a motto. So we have our motto. And it says, "Believing in our community." That's the little motto that we've given for our work, Salvation Army Community Ministries in Rathmines. Believing in our community. And for us, this has a two-sided meaning to that phrase. First of all, we believe in our community. We're here for the people of Rathmines and the surrounding areas. We want to see the betterment of Rathmines. We believe in the potential of this area. We believe in our community. But because we're a Christian organization, because we're a Christian movement, a Christian church, we bring our faith beliefs into that same community. We are believing in our community. Now, that doesn't mean going around Bible bashing people with the gospel, but just the realization of the presence of Jesus in all that we do. Believing in our community. So how do we go about our community engagement? We're a small organization, a small Christian church here in Ireland, always have been in Ireland for about 130 years, always been small. But what do we actually do? What do we do here in Rathmines? So let me tell you a story of what we do and why we do it. About 130, 140 years ago, a man by the name of William Booth, quite an eccentric man, started this peculiar Christian movement called the Salvation Army. And from it, congregations started to spring up, people who wanted to be part of this new church, this perhaps new way of doing church. And the story goes that one evening, William Booth was coming back from a church service, living in London, and driving in his carriage, and he was going through London, and he noticed underneath the bridges were men who were sleeping rough, men who were homeless, men who were just existing in this space. And he got back to his home, and he said to his grown-up son, Bramwell, he said to him, "I've just seen men living underneath the bridges." Now, I don't think 150 years ago they had the term, "well, duh," but I have to imagine that Bramwell said that. He said, "Well, of course, we've all seen that." And then William Booth said two powerful words, which have resonated throughout the history of the Salvation Army ever since, and resonate in my life now. And those two words were, he looked at his son and he said, "Do something." That was it. Do something. Now, he didn't give a great plan of what it was he had to do. He didn't say, set up this committee, set up this scheme, set up kind of fundraising idea. He just said, do something. And so we here in the Salvation Army in Rathmines, we try to do something. Now, it might be some kind of grand scheme, but it's something. And that's the encouragement, the challenge I would bring to anyone looking at the idea of kind of engaging with communities. Well, do something. Plenty of us have sat in committees, till you're kind of blue in the face. Do something about it. Do something. And it's not radical what we do. I thought when I went to the Salvation Army's training college in London, theological college, I thought I'll come out of it and there'll be something radical, and what I want to do is, I'm going to turn the world upside down for Jesus. I'm going to have all these great ideas, and I'm so encouraged that Os Guinness was saying about not having to really be kind of fancy and cutting edge, because it turns out that I'm not. I'm just not. Rob said that we could tweet through this, and I looked at my phone and I said, this phone barely texts. Honestly. But so it's not radical what we do. I thought I had these great ideas of being radical, but it's not. The only thing that we do is we bring people together, particularly young families that we're dealing with, who want to be together, want to form community, want to be with other people. So it's simple little things like toddler groups, baby groups. At the other end of the spectrum, I do have drop-in cafes for older people. And forget the radical ideas. If you can do something with older people, my goodness me, they would be grateful if you could bring people together in that way. But what we have found is that as we have been doing these groups, something wonderful has happened. This idea of building community and creating community has certainly happened. We like to see our groups that we do as maybe something a little bit different. I think if a church is to do any kind of group, the church should have the best group that there is in town. They really should try to strive towards that. Why not? My goodness me, we are representatives of the creator of the universe. We should do something good, shouldn't we? And so we try our best to do something good, and when people compliment us on enjoying the activities that we do, that feels good. But we want to see things at another level, and so we often find there are little indicators that we see that community is being created in what we do. And funnily enough, one of the indicators that we see in our toddler groups, particularly in our work with young families, is people crying. People come to our toddler group and they cry. And I don't think it's because I sing the wheels on the bus. But we have allowed a safe space for people to be. And my wife has a wonderful pastoral heart, and she has the ability to just chat with people and draw things out of people and be there with people at some very difficult times in their life. Times where they are, although they may be in the group, they are actually feeling quite lonely, and they are going through circumstances that young families go through, and somebody is there to listen, and Jesus is present in those conversations. So we build community, and it's not radical. It's not radical at all, but it's doing something. It's doing something. One of the things that I've been aware of, we do groups that might have a long sort of term relationship, and some of these groups that we have, we'll see people for weeks and weeks and months, and that's lovely. You build up a relationship that way. Other things we do might have a short idea of community. So for instance, we, at this time of year, are going to do a little gospel choir for Christmas, just 4 short weeks. 4 short weeks, we're meeting at the Rathgar Methodist Church at 4 o'clock on Sunday. You're welcome to join us there, the first Sunday in November. But you bring these little groups together for just a short time, and community is built. And you have a wonderful time together, and you realize the good things that are happening there, the God things that are happening in that space. But I've also noticed we have long-term projects, we have short-term projects, but I have seen that community is being created as ideas pop up elsewhere. We have perhaps been able to inspire people to bring people together in other forms elsewhere. And so it's always interesting when every now and then we hear of, for instance, if I go back to the idea of a toddler, parent and toddler group again, toddler groups in the area who are doing messy play and arts and crafts and songs and storytelling. And I look at it and I think, my goodness, that sounds very much like what we do. And then you look at who's organizing it and you think, oh, they used to come to our group. And at first you think, hang on a minute, that was my idea. And then you realize, no, wait a minute. What a good thing is going on here. We haven't created that community, but we have perhaps inspired someone to go and do that themselves and bring people together. People need to be together in community, and we're so happy that that kind of thing happens. We should be generous with our ideas. I should say, as an aside, I think the whole idea of generosity is vital. It's one of the greatest assets that the Christian church has, that idea of generosity in a society that we live in that has been ruined by greed. The church has the wonderful privilege of writing a counter-narrative with open hands and just being generous to people, not only in their time, but in the spaces that they have. And my goodness me, doesn't the Lord know that the church has the resources to be able to do all those kinds of things? So we should be generous. Let me just close with a few thoughts, if I may, of an example of what happens when community doesn't exist. I had a conversation a couple of years ago that I hope will stick with me forever. I was meeting in an older people's complex, and I said, let's do something to bring people together. We'll have a little coffee morning. We'll just invite a few people to come round, have a cup of tea, piece of cake, and a chat in this older people's complex. And I was chatting to one man, and we were talking about this and that. We talked about the weather. We started talking about some of the deeper things in life, and we talked about the weather again, probably. And this conversation went on for 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. And then I said, look, I better go and put the kettle on and make another pot of tea and chat to some of these other people. And as I stood up to go, he grabbed my hand, grabbed my arm, and with tears in his eyes, he said, thank you. That is the longest conversation I have had for probably 8 years. And I thought, my goodness me, what has happened to community? That somebody can be even living with other people and just not spend more than 20 minutes talking to them. So it's not radical. It's not great ideas. But the challenge is do something. It's not good to be alone. Do something. Well, God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of the day.